How much do you know about Yemen? You probably heard it's on the brink of famine and is the world's worst humanitarian crisis. But what do you really know about what's going on in Yemen beyond the headlines? Did you know that Yemen was once called Arabia Felix? It means lucky or happy Arabia. My name is Warda and I work for the UN Refugee Agency. I'm here today to talk to you about Yemen, and I'll be speaking to my colleague Noor, who's been living there since she was 6 years old. So tell me, what was it like growing up in Yemen?
Well, despite living through the conflict throughout my life, believe it or not, I have happy memories growing up as a child here. My favorite memory was my father taking us to Bab el Yemen, where we used to walk through the old city. Imagine there was once a live orchestra there, and there were many tourists. And did you know that mocha coffee originates from Yemen?
The situation in Yemen is often cited as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. But why? There's ongoing conflict, cholera outbreak, floods, COVID-19, and now the country's on the brink of famine. But before we go into details, let's get some basic facts straight. Yemen is a country in the Middle East. It lies at the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. Its population, 30.8 million people. 20 million of them require humanitarian assistance. That's 66% of the entire population of Yemen. That's more than the combined populations of Sweden, Norway, and Finland. So why are so many people in need of help?
Well, Yemen has been in and out of conflict and political instability since the 1960s. I remember, for example, in 1994, there was a civil war between the North and the South. But in 2015, for example, the situation was different because the conflict turned into a full-blown war.
In all these wars, thousands of Yemenis have died and around 4 million have been forced to flee their homes. In fact, today, 1 in 8 Yemenis are displaced.
My house, where I lived with my son and my parents, was bombed twice. In 2015 and then in the end of 2017, we were forced to move into a different neighborhood. We consider ourselves really lucky to be able to afford to move.
These repeated conflicts left a huge dent in Yemen's economy and infrastructure. Hospitals, residential buildings, schools, and roads were all affected. They also led to a huge shortage of food and medical supplies. People in Yemen struggle to buy food for their families, and some can't even afford to sleep on a mattress.
What's striking in Yemen is that it's a young population with more than 7.4 million children caught up in the conflict. My childhood in Yemen was challenging because of all the problems, fuel crisis, and electric cuts.
So we talked about the conflict in Yemen, but sadly it's not the only thing wreaking havoc in the country. In the last few years, Yemen witnessed the largest cholera outbreak in modern history. But only 50% of health facilities are functional. So what are humanitarian organizations doing about this? The humanitarian operation in Yemen is the largest in the world. The largest, yet it's severely underfunded. In 2020, funding shortages forced aid agencies to shut some of their critical and life-saving programs in Yemen. UNHCR too had to prioritize and support only the most vulnerable displaced families, leaving millions without assistance. So, what can you and me do about the situation in Yemen? You can spread the word that Yemen cannot wait, and you can ask your government to support aid humanitarian programs in Yemen. Join us in our efforts to save lives and protect Yemenis from further harm. The people of Yemen deserve better, and you can be part of this change.